In this episode, there will be some sensitive themes and possibly strong language used. We advise if you have children to tune back in some other time. Otherwise, just be prepared for some sensitive topics, and we hope you enjoy the show.
You're listening to the Whole Church Podcast, a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. Our efforts to educate and unite the church are made possible thanks to our sponsors on Patreon, Captivate, and Apple Podcast. You could join them on one of those networks, or you can support the show by making a one-time tip on our Captivate website down below in the show's description.
Hey guys, thank you guys so much for listening to the show. We had a lot of requests for our last episode about cussing and cursing to have an episode that's without as many of the words. So for context, the episode is about using inappropriate language, profanity, inappropriate jokes, stuff like that. And a lot of people wanted to hear our argument so we could talk about it, but they didn't want to hear the profanity because we go in assuming that there's no such thing as a bad word. I have edited it just specifically for those people who want to have that conversation with us, but don't want to hear the profanity. However, some of the conversation doesn't make sense if I just take out the word. So what I've done is censored the word so that when I say words like it's actually going to sound like and not. That way, anybody can listen. I do want to put asterisks here. I am not a master editor. I didn't come through it 500 times, so there might still be some swear words in it. There's still a lot of inappropriate conversation or some sensitive topics that maybe you don't want to listen to this around children still. So I'm not going to mark this as clean. I'm going to mark this as PG-13. Again, this is just for people who want to hear the kind of argument that or discussion we had with myself, TJ, Pastor Will Rose, Ryan Doze, and Josh Patterson. If you want to hear this conversation, this is the PG-13 cut. I did my best to kind of censor some of those words and take stuff down a little bit. So please listen. If this is the version you need to be able to hear the conversation, that's great. We don't take any offense to that. And we look forward to hearing from you and to continue this conversation so that the whole church can be whole again. We can move forward together in unity. Even if we disagree, we can disagree in unity. It's not uniformity. So with that, again, thank you guys so much for your time, for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you and appreciate each and every person who takes the time to listen to this.
1 Corinthians 10:27-33 in the NASB say, "If one of the unbelievers invites you and you want to go, eat anything that is set before you without asking questions for the sake of conscience. But if anyone says to you, 'This is meat sacrificed to idols,' do not eat it, for the sake of that one who informed you and for the sake of conscience. Now, by conscience I do not mean your own, but the other person's. For why is my freedom judged by another's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I slandered about that for which I give thanks? Therefore, whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do all things for the glory of God. Do not offend Jews or Greeks or the church of God. Just as I also please everyone in all things, not seeking my own benefit, but the benefit of the many, so that they may be saved." In this pericope, St. Paul writes to the church of Corinth and is instructing the church how to handle situations of consciousness, interacting with people who may believe differently, and how to share the gospel. Ryan Doze, in our own time and context, how might it look today for us to live in such a way where we attempt to not offend others needlessly?
Wow, needlessly being a key word there. It really, as I was kind of thinking through this opening, it can really just go back to the golden rule. It can really just go back to treating others the way you yourself would want to be treated. And I think to dust off my Bible study skills, I think actually incorporating a little bit of what Jesus tells Peter to let the love that you have for each other be the way that people know you by, leading in that way and leading by the golden rule. Probably your best way to go about this, and do it with as clean and clear of a conscience as you possibly can.
All right. Ooh, yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Whole Church Podcast. Possibly your favorite church unity podcast, possibly not. That's fine. We can't be in competition. It's kind of in the name. That would be just weird. I am here, of course, chiefly to announce the one and only TJ, Tiberius Juan Blackwell, the one who invented hockey. That's just as cool as anything else I've ever said about him, actually. We've said some stuff that put him there at the beginning of time. Yeah, really let that sit in. We are also here with three great friends, the best friends I could think of to talk about dirty jokes and cussing with. Ryan Does, host of Across the Bifrost. We have Josh Patterson, host of Rethinking Faith. Yeah, Pastor Will Rose, my pastor, and the pastor of Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Chapel Hill. I just keep wanting to say America. North Carolina, Charlotte, America. I don't know. Guys, I am coming off of like some kind of terrible cold or something. My wife has COVID. I might say nasally and bad. That's one disclaimer. The other disclaimer is we're not going to be here to answer whether or not cussing is good or bad. We're not going to be here to kind of justify how we use language, but language will be had in this episode. We will be saying the bad word, not just describing. Like we're not going to be like, hey, Will, can I say fuck? I'm just going to say fuck during. Yeah. So that's how it's going to work.
You bad boy. If you, like what we do here, except for this episode, I have great news. Every other episode is not going to be like this one. You should check them out on the Ozal Podcast Network website. Link is below. Check that out. If you do like what we're doing here, let us know. Maybe we'll just do every episode like this.
that would be something.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Love the idea.
Let us know.
His first episode ever.
Yeah. Cast your votes. Cast your votes on our merch shop. Just buy something and we'll know what you say.
Yeah. Also, I might be changing the merch shop. Most of the products will be the same. We'll just have to be changing distributor because what we're currently using isn't working very well for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
yeah.
Anyway,
Distributors.
Other things that we do here. You can't be in division when you're being as silly as I like to be. Silliness that happens now. Silly time. There we go. We're gonna start with. I don't know why I had that pulled up. Oops, sorry. What's the funniest joke in a cartoon you watched growing up that may have gone over your head as a child? TJ and I will answer first. Give everybody time to think about it. One of my favorite shows as a kid was Rocko's Modern Life. I loved it. Most of that show went over my head as a kid. But as an adult, if I ever go back and watch any of it, it's just so funny. The characters you ignore, Ed and Bev Big Head, the frogs, they're just straight up a swinger couple, and they constantly make jokes about it. And it's wonderful. So, that's what I'm going with. DJ, joke went over your head as a kid in a cartoon.
No idea. None of them.
Yeah, he's never been a child. He's always been fully grown and had a correct knowledge of all things.
Yeah, nothing comes to mind. I'll try to think.
What's something that goes over kids' heads that happens in SpongeBob?
A lot. Panty raid.
I don't remember.
All right. Well, Josh and Ryan sound like they can just give double answers, so it's fine. Will.
Oh, I was a big Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny fan as a kid, and so I really think the sexual harassment of Pepe Le Pew is really one. They were like, "Wait a minute, come on, dude. No, it means no. Means no. I don't care. I know you're, insecure because you may smell, or you're just not self-aware of what's going on with you, but control your body and
He's groping that cat heavily.
Yes. Come on.
All right. The star of Dirty Joke. Right. Yeah, you're the professional. This is your area of expertise.
No, I do love that this is what got me in matters of church discipline back when I was on staff places. And now it's like, you're the king of this. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. So I thought of one joke and then one reference. So one of my favorite movies of all time, barring kids or kids movie, adult movie, is first Shrek movie. Is genius at layering in adult humor amongst children's language. So one of the most iconic parts of that movie is the song that is played when they get to Duloc, and welcome to Duloc, yeah, perfect place, all that.
Okay.
Please keep off of the grass, shine your shoes, wipe your face. One of my favorite jokes of all time, and one of the games I now play as an adult watching children's movies with my kids, especially old Disney movies, is like, okay, where are they hiding dongs and vaginas in this scene? And Little Mermaid is like freaking softcore in the way that they show off phallic imagery. So Little Mermaid is a real treat as an adult. Now when you're just like, oh my gosh, there's so many dicks in the background of this image. So yeah, Disney family fun for the whole generation, for every generation.
Yeah, the whole they lean on the hidden diggy thing in Little Mermaid instead of the normal.
I also I'm just gonna throw out for an extra, since you threw out an extra before Josh. I mean, you're not gonna say this one anyway. It doesn't matter. The Ratchet and Clank series, I started playing them pretty young. I don't know at what point that I realized how they named the games were just exclusively these kind of jokes, where it's just going commando, up your arsenal, a crack in time, size matters. I love these games. They're great. All right, Jeff.
I want to give a shout out to Will Rose because he brought up Pepe Le Pew and talked about consent. And I think one thing Pepe Le Pew could learn is if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no. So we're all about enthusiastic consent for podcast. Yeah. I assume so. It's not my show. I'm assuming that's correct. People learn. But so for me, I want to pull from Rocco's Modern Life like Joshua did. What's the Josh thing? So at one point, they play a game called Spank the Monkey. They have paddles, and there's like a monkey in the middle of the table, like on string, and they make the monkey together in a circle. So
Kind of, yeah. I can't recommend highly enough for people to go watch Rocco's Modern Life as a grown-up. It's a must.
Generally speaking, why do we feel like so many faith traditions treat speech as such an important topic? And what is it that makes some words or jokes feel off limits? Will, you were there for the foundation of some of these religions. What do you think?
Hit evil on his ass, Will.
Whoa.
I've started religions. Religions have been formed around me.
Yeah, that's our fault.
I have several times introduced him as Magic Head for a reason.
Yeah, I just think I think if we really want to do a deep dive in terms of religion, spirituality, there's always been a perception of what is holy or profane or secular. So you're trying to separate that which is godly and that which is earthly, and this kind of purity kind of culture around all things in life, whether what kind of food you eat or how you reverence the altar or not, or what kind of language you use. The 10 Commandments, are the first 3 are, no other gods, but also not taking the Lord's name in vain, and how you treat the Sabbath day, whether it's holy or not. So there's this holy language. And so I think being mindful of our language that we use or don't use in the presence of the divine or not, it has always been a part of religion. But I think there's also been a move, I think rightfully so, being authentic and being our true selves. Can we be our authentic true selves in front of the divine, being who we are among our friends, about our loved ones. And so God acting differently in church than we are like on the golf course. What does that say about who we are, and code switching, all those things are kind of all wrapped up and entangled with how we use language and jokes and those kinds of things. That's where my mind goes in terms of reflecting on those things. And like I tell my own kids and what I told my youth group and all kinds of things, I don't care if you say a cuss word. I do care how you treat another person. There's one thing to be cuss in traffic or say something, dropping an F-bomb or a damn it when you stub your toe. It's another thing if it's a complete jerk or asshole to another person, and cussing and swearing, and how you're treating the other person. So I think that, for me, that's more of the authentic way to talk about how we use language and how we treat the other person. And then there's a reason why the second commandment is how we use God's name and the reverence and respect and worship when it comes to what makes it holy or not in the language you use. So those are some of the things that I reflect upon. Now, jokes, I think comedy is the whole nother thing about dirty jokes or profane jokes, or just stand-up comedy, lifting up a mirror to the absurdity of life and what that looks like, and pushing boundaries in terms of shock and awe of people and what we laugh at, what we find funny. That's a whole different thing. But I think, there's something there about being our true selves and how we can feel like we are our true selves around our friends and loved ones that we're close with, even the divine. And then how we use our language, not being mindful or self-aware of the language we use around people we don't know, or kids, or teens, or people of religions and that kind of stuff. So that's where my mind goes when it comes to that question.
To me, it feels like one of those things where in the early church, it was really important to distinguish ourselves from, secular people. And one of the ways that you could do that is by refraining from using certain words, which can be misconstrued pretty easily as just a method of control from the church. That's just what I think as how that really picked up and snowballed into, evangelical
Well,
Puritans.
religion, I like that. Religion is often seen as like a list of don'ts. Oh, you can't do this, you don't do this, rather than what we're called to do or treat other people. So there's that stereotype of like pop culture, religion, pop culture. When people find out I'm a pastor, I'm on the golf course and they're like by the fourth hole, and they're like, they find out I'm a pastor. They're like, oh my gosh, what did I say? I can't believe I cussed. I'm like, dude, I don't care if you cuss. I'm really care that you're playing. You're not being mindful of
If I was playing like dick, I'd be cursing too.
And
so yeah, I like that.
Think there is something interesting about how the purity metaphor within religious frameworks as a whole, but I'm speaking from my own context growing up Christian, gets kind of dropped into so many different places. And when that metaphor is kind of pushed too far or taken, beyond the limits that it's meant to describe, it can get us into all sorts of issues. And maybe I'm only thinking about that because recently I talked with Billy and Paul Horde about their fantastic book, Contamination, discuss theology and the Christian life. And they do a deep dive into how the purity metaphor and language functions within the Christian system and within the Christian tradition. And so I think when it comes to things like swearing or dirty jokes, that purity metaphor is something that kind of comes into play because now there's this bad thing that can contaminate the good thing and make it impure or something like that.
can I add a couple of things real quick, Peter? No? Okay.
Please do.
I mean, CJ show. I just work here. But no, I actually, being the nerd and loser I am, if I'm thinking about this historically, I think a lot of it actually comes down to like some form of social Darwinism. I think that anytime humans exist, there's going to be bad words and there's going to be sacred words. And I think it typically, honestly, has a lot to do with comparison. I think of, and this made my brain laugh a little bit earlier, but I think of Marty in Back to the Future getting really pissed off that someone called him a chicken. You know, I'm like, but honestly, like most of the times, if you track like your swear words, like it does just make sense. Like, shit, yeah, at some point you called somebody crap and they got offended by that, and you're like, oh, I can use this word for power and attack people and call them this and compare it to that. Most of your swear words kind of start like that. Sometimes as a culture, we throw a flag and we go, wait, don't do that. I think of, all the asterisks, double bad word warning, I guess. It was used a lot when we were in high school. Actually, me and Josh and Ryan, I assume. I don't know.
No, me.
But we were, and time yes, you're my age. I actually remember a time.
Okay, cool.
I remember a time where like I started hearing like people would use rape, like mind rape or this kind of like, and I feel like I'm really glad we got away from that. But I think a lot of these cuss words and even your sacred words comes back to comparison and just how language evolves over time. It started by, oh, I don't like being compared to poop, and then eventually it's now a bad word, right? It's a bad word. A lot of it I think is comparison. So a lot of your sacred words are going to be something similar. And it does, I think in general, come to, is our language building someone up or tearing them down, right? And that's where I think the Hebrew religions are really interesting because it does have, Yahweh is an unpronounceable word. We have a word so powerful that we just can't pronounce it. And I think that does probably also come back to, you can't compare that to any other word. It doesn't sound like another word. It's not anything because it isn't. Breath is the closest we get. And there's a lot of really cool Jewish theology around that. But yeah, I think most of this is going to come down to comparison and social Darwinism, and I'm a loser for bringing that up, I guess.
Well, you knew how to effectively communicate Darwinism, so I don't think that makes you a loser.
I don't know. Bringing up Darwinism in a conversation.
Okay, no. I do think it's interesting that there are, even in, adult circles who like to say the fun words, there are limits. Like in Australia, everyone says cunt. Everybody. Uh, Here,
Moving to Australia.
depending on who you say it to, you might just get slapped.
I feel really uncomfortable when people use that word, and then like you watch British shows or The Boys, and it's just constant. Yeah, I don't know. That word was the one for me that I'm like, I don't like that word.
I was talking to a mutual friend of ours, and they were talking about living with their kid overseas. And they came home from school one day and were using the C word. They were like, "We don't say that." It's like, "Yeah, everybody in school says it, Dad." And they were like 6, 7 years old. So it is interesting how language is kind of subjective in that sense and shifts and changes not just over time, but even in social location, like where you are, what's appropriate, what's good, what's bad.
Yeah. That honestly, like in relation to this first question, I think like this whole topic, like this meta topic of use of language, uh, really just comes down to time, place, like all the contextual items that we would associate with what Josh just said. Like in, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but like in first century when Paul is writing, this, especially the section of text TJ read at the beginning, is a first century Greek speaker. So his concept of appropriate language isn't even in the same ballpark of how we interpret the badness of a word or not today. And I think one added thing where the church gets involved here and things get a little murky and muddled is associating the use of specific language with your morality as opposed to being honest about where that language is best used in context. Like if I say fuck, that doesn't make me a morally bad person, but where I choose to use the word fuck might make me an undisciplined person, or maybe someone who can't read social cues, or using things out of context like that. That is, I think it says way more about that person's maturity or responsibility with language, as opposed to where the church gets to say like, or the church has claimed, to have that purity culture mindset of like, no, that is a bad word. One thing Will knows this. I talk to Will about parenting a lot. I have 2 8-year-olds for a few more weeks right now. And when words that we wouldn't like them to repeat at school come out at home, like I'll stub my toe or something, and I'll be like, and I'll look at my son and he'll be like, that is a word that we don't use at school. I'm not saying that's a bad word. I'm saying that we have a certain context we do not use that word in. So yeah, I'm sure I'll hit that again, Joshua. That was my one big thing that I I really wanted to hit, especially related to this question.
That was actually something like until I was in like high school, I just thought my parents didn't cuss at all, ever.
Wild.
So we had us already are. How should churches handle differences of opinion in this topic? Because, we've got a couple of different styles here. Ryan, you'll say it in front of your kids, and it's like, hey, that's not a appropriate word for school, and probably church. I feel like you should start adding church into that. Um, just maybe. My parents who wouldn't swear around us, Josh's parents who don't swear at all. How do we handle the difference of opinion on this topic? And can we even start to talk with one another about unity if we can't agree on how we should speak? Big question.
Well, for me, I think it's time and place. Like I am well aware that I swear probably more than the average person. Um, but also I'm always aware of my context. And so I think it's important. I think it's a respect thing. Like I recognize if I'm in church or if I'm around a certain group of people that I know might not, appreciate foul language, then I do my best. I'm not perfect at it. I do my best not to utilize that language. So I don't think it's um I don't know. I think I like Brian's point about maturity. I think recognizing your context and then like being respectful enough to not, use language in situations that is not appropriate, is good. So I think it kind of falls on the person. I don't know if we'll ever really agree on, is this right or wrong? But I think for me, it comes down to, do I respect the people around me enough to not use language that they're uncomfortable with? Um,
Yeah.
So
I want
That's
to
how I feel.
I want to double that and throw a wrench into it so that Will can
do it.
correct us all. Yeah. That, that- I I want to yes. I've always found it weird. Like, why are we saying these aren't really bad words if you don't want to say them in school or in front of other people? And it's because like we don't want to intentionally offend people. That's actually in the Bible pretty frequently. White people are offended by some of these words are kind of beyond me, but I understand why. If people are offended, we don't want to offend people needlessly. Um, on the other hand, though, I always taught that way. Like, this is why we don't cuss. This is why we don't cuss. This is why we don't cuss. And then I go to a workplace and I'm in a public area. And then the guy who doesn't cuss and never says any bad words makes everybody else feel like he thinks he's better than them and high and mighty. And then it's like, actually, is the moral thing to try and sound better than everybody else? Or should maybe you speak to the level of the people you're talking to? I don't know. And that's where I was going to throw it to Will, but he disappeared.
Yeah, he got
And
it.
Ryan now
So-
has all the answers.
So I think the PJ threw in the wrench that I noticed first of adding church into that appropriate place. Now, I think that comes with another bit of sticky subconscious behavior that we do. We treat church events, activities, buildings, context as if they are kind of inherently special. It's what Will referenced. Being on the golf course, you're nowhere near a place of worship. You're nowhere near any like structure with crosses or crucifixes, anywhere near it. But the fact that Will, by his title, is so attached to that subconscious understanding of like, oh, that's the church guy. I have to kind of put on my appropriate church hat, disavowing us like from the connection that a location is magic. Now, like evangelicals love to do this. We're like, the church isn't a place, man. It's a people. It's like, okay, I'm going to say fucking your church building and we'll see how much it's not a place and it's a people. Like we say those things of like, oh, it's not about the four walls, man. Like, I don't know why I'm doing a hippie voice for this. But we say it's not a location. We say it's not a place. But then when we enter into that specific place, that physical space, we recontextualize kind of like what is right here inside the four walls is, is right, good church behavior. I think that is also kind of a dangerous subconscious that we get in because, but you guys know this. I have not been a paid clergy, pastor, whatever, for 5 years. I am way out the game. A coworker of mine found out that I was a pastor 5 years ago, a few months ago. He brings it up all the time. And I am saying horrendous things, not at him, but around him all the time. And he's like, you were a pastor? I was like, half a decade ago, man. Calm down. I'm not magic. And if I was, I'm definitely not now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I am one of the hippies that it's not about the four walls,
like,
but
it works.
I tried to stay consistent with it.
So like I think it also boils down to like depth of relationship and maturity when it comes to that. So like, yeah, if I learn someone's like a doctor, I'm going to like, I might ask them different kind of questions or act them down, act a certain way around it. Or if they're a police officer, stand up a little straight. Oh no, what's going on? Or a lawyer. And then when they find a pastor, there's these stereotypes and labels attached to people of the cloth, men and women who are pastors, who serve in that role, who are priests or pastors, who are supposed to lift up those things that are holy, and that again, that kind of pop culture notion or stereotypes of what it means to be pastor and holy, and what you can and can't do in a church building, and that kind of stuff. We get some of that from scripture verses taken out of context and that kind of stuff about you touch the ark wrong, so you're going to be dropped dead, kind of thing. So you say that you drop an F-bomb in church or in the pulpit, lightning's going to strike you, right, Josh? And so the
Right,
I see.
I did do that at my most recent engagement. I dropped
Like, oh, so good.
But if you get to know somebody, you're not like, so like if I just meet someone, I'm not going to come right out of the gate and just tell them all the deep dark secrets of who I am and what's going on and just speak freely. I want to get to know them a little bit. Can where does trust land in this, and trust in being who I am around them and how I use language, and um being vulnerable around them. Once I get to know someone better, and become friends with them, I can be. So now, again, we'll get later on, maybe perhaps talk about calling people out when they go too far or they use language that demeans other people, um, or in a way that breaks a commitment of how I love God and love my neighbor. I think that's what friendship and community does as well. When you take things too far, there's a reason. Some comics get canceled. In terms of cancel culture, that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of what does it mean if you take something too far, but also where's a level of trust and relationship and maturity when you have with another person or with your religion or with the community that nurtures you and guides you and holds you accountable. I think all that comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think as much as like the four walls and different stuff can be annoying that conversations people have, um, I do find it slightly, I don't know. I think sacred things can be good. I think it's good for people to have sacred things. Um, it's just how closely do we hold it tight? Like maybe it's healthy to have an area where we're like, hey, we're going to talk differently in this space. We're going to treat it differently because it means something to us. I think it'd be interesting to get like Dan to talk about this, like a psychology of the sacred or something. Be interesting. You know, I mean, I find that if I treat Disney World like it's just any other place, it's not as much fun as if I like hype it up in my brain and I'm like, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And the same thing's probably true of church and other sacred things, you know.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Josh. All I could think was like, go that mouse. Josh would be like, okay, well, I know where the next schism is going to happen. Right here, out, right now.
Yeah, changing the name is now the Divided Church Podcast.
Right.
Which we did have a guest once that did say maybe it would be better if we had more fractions. So that was interesting. That was a fun time.
Yeah. Sounds like a fun guy.
Yeah, it was great. That's why I didn't like Lutherans for a solid like 2 years. But then I met Will. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to ask, what do we do if, yeah, you guys know I'm a really sensitive guy. So what do I do if I'm offended? Like Ryan jumps in and says, "F that mouse," and I'm deeply hurt by it. How should I respond to Ryan?
You tell Ryan to go fucking stuff.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Why don't you fly your South Carolina ass out here? Why don't you come to my territory where, I don't have home field. You won't have home field advantage and say that.
Yeah, we don't do that. We drive.
Oh, you coastal elite. Think liar.
No, I think, but in all seriousness, though, I think that there's a proper way to like let somebody know that the language that they're using is bothering you, and if that person is not a jerk, then they'll probably like hopefully at least listen and acknowledge that. So I think it's okay to admit when we're uncomfortable with things. I think a lot of times today we get uh, weird or nervous around admitting when we are uncomfortable with things because we don't want to be perceived a certain kind of way or whatever. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with saying, hey, like, you know, probably you shouldn't talk like that right now. Especially like I know for me, like one of my flaws is for like out somewhere and like I let something slip by accident, there's like kids around. And Noelle will be like, dude, like there's kids. Like, oh, right. Sorry. I shouldn't say that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting to somebody when words are harmful, and yeah, just owning that for yourself. I think that's a good thing.
yeah. I 2 things. One, really threw me off that he said Noel will be like, because like I forgot that his wife is named Noel, and I thought he was just talking about me. Like people use their last name, like, come on, Noel, God, and I'm like, no, they're like, oh. But it goes like I actually do sometimes get offended by some jokes. So like a lot of times people make like those trans jokes, and sometimes they really get on my nerves because I have friends and I'm like, I don't like that. Even though South Park's I identify as a dolphin thing was still hilarious. Sometimes these jokes I'm like, I don't know if I'm comfortable. I don't want to participate in that kind of joking around.
No, for me, when it happens, it's always online, and it's just kind of a thing where like, hey man, we don't say that anymore.
Can't say that no more. When someone's like hurricane suck, you're like, no, can't joke like that.
No, it's been like 10 years, man. Let it go. Oh, it's been like 10 years since the hurricane sucked. Come on.
Go back to self-awareness. I think there's a self-awareness of like, who are you trying to impress? Who are you trying to push down so that you're higher or boost your ego? And I think there's a place where you can call that out. It'd be like, there's been times like, Hannah, when she dropped her books going to kindergarten, she said, "Damn it." And I was like, where'd she learn that? And then like a day later, I heard Cindy around the girls going, "Damn it," or something. She dropped something. I was like, that's fine, whatever. But if somebody's in front of us in a line or a movie and the dude's cussing like crazy in front of my little kids and he's trying to impress his girlfriend by using I'm like, man, can you just like pump the brakes a little bit? Can you like be around you, be self-aware of around you? But then like, again, it comes down to like self-awareness and insecurity and security and trust in our relationships. I think where we use these words, I think words matter, but also, like, be yourselves. I guess there's that balance there of that kind of stuff. And then I think you're allowed to call somebody out and I think that's what the commandments are doing. It talks about God's name. It talks about your neighbor. Good Lord, my church phone. Damn it. Damn it, my church. Popular. It's what time is it? Goodness. That's where I kind of go back and forth. Is like how we're using language to either boost ourselves up or tear down other people and those kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
Joshua, I would love to throw in a counterpoint here. Not that what the guys haven't been saying is awesome, good, wise. I feel like we're kind of playing the role of everyone's guidance counselors right now. And basically, don't be a stupid person. Counterpoint, though, one thing that I'm learning in raising children is to develop thicker skin with language you cannot control. So like you're not always going to be able to control how another person uses language. And as I continue this mindset of like, being an armchair etymologist here, like you're not going to be able to appropriately respond to language that is offensive all the time. If you're able to respond to it effectively and make point and like within relationship, kind of what Will was talking about, how like all of our kind of instructions from Jesus and from the commandments is like, it's a community trying to, in a sense, govern itself as terms of how we should treat others. But also sometimes you might have to let it slide. You might have to let it go. That was something I had to learn in not necessarily in like certain bad words, the 5 or 6 that jump to our minds, but like not to let language so impact me as to where I am constantly brittle and bruised and broken by every single thing that gets lobbed my way. I think that is maybe to play devil's advocate. That is another thing to consider when we talk about language. Is yes, to respond when it needs to be responded to, but also to know when to not respond, like to develop the thicker skin. I just think that maybe someone might need to hear the counterpoint to that, because I know I would.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I appreciate that. Good words.
No.
But also for our listeners, I have to translate. I asked everybody what happens when I got really offended and hurt when Ryan said, "Fuck that mouse." And Ryan's advice was to suck it up. Just so everyone's aware. Yeah, if you're following the story. All right. Sorry, Will.
I look forward to not being invited on again.
Oh, you're invited every Tuesday. You just,
Every Tuesday.
Get the invite every
Show up and say what you want. So I have a few rapid questions for everybody. It's really just one per person, but we're going to start with J. Patty. There's a conversation that happens way more than it should on Christian college campuses about the difference between cursing and cussing. So, could you help illuminate our audience on how this conversation usually goes?
I'm going to do my best because I never personally participated in said conversation on college campuses.
Lucky holder.
But what I think it's getting at is the difference would be like, I think intent probably is where it's coming from. So cussing is more so about like if I'm goofing off with a friend and I, say shit or call them a dick or whatever, the intent is not mean. I'm not trying to tear down or harm or anything like that. It's just, it's an exclamation or whatever. Whereas cursing somebody, I think, is intentionally trying to tear them down with your language. You're trying to cause harm, whether, we believe in the idea of like cursing somebody like a witch might curse somebody or whatever, or not. I think that's kind of where it's coming from. Like, are we using our language to cause harm? Are we trying to tear people down? And I think this is a really important distinction because I think, again, intent really matters. I'm going to like harp on this always. You can use clean language without ever swearing and destroy somebody and tear somebody down. This happens all the time to LGBTQ folks. The church loves to use non-curse words that make queer folks want to kill themselves. That is cursing somebody. That is wrong. And I don't see how, when, people get upset about someone said like, oh, fuck or shit, because, whatever in the pulpit, or they make a silly joke, the impact of that is not as great, even though you use like harsher language. So I think the intent really matters. Cussing would be kind of like goofing off with friends, not trying to harm anybody, using sentence enhancers, as they call them in SpongeBob. And cursing would be, again, called tear people down or to, wish ill will to somebody.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned intent, actually, because people might be listening and thinking, what about slurs? Slurs are bad because they intentionally are created to deride people groups. Those aren't included in this. Don't say those. So, does anyone disagree before we move on?
All right. So try to think of a creative way to disagree, but all I could think of was, hey, Josh, the caps are ass. Like that's all I got.
Oh, true.
I fit first once. Figured I'd get an enthusiasm from TJ on that one.
So, Joshua, C.S. Lewis talks about sexual jokes in The Four Loves. Could you catch us up on his part of this conversation?
Yeah.
Nerd.
It's actually one of the things that, there's a lot of things I love about C.S. Lewis. I actually thought this part really threw me when I first read it because I was like a young little evangelical, gonna be a pastor one day kid, And I remember like first reading this book, and C.S. Lewis is talking about, all the different loves and how they all fail compared to God's love, kind of, deal. And a lot of that stuff still, I'm like, that's not how I would have ever thought of it. C.S. Lewis is a really interesting brain. He gets to this like sex stuff, and he's like, he has this line where he's like, we treat it way more seriously than we should. And then he's like, asterisk, or with the wrong kind of seriousness anyway. And he like goes on and he's like, think about it, like every time like you have sex, sometimes your body just doesn't work, or it's like, oh, sorry, wrong time of month, or like you try to do something and it's like, oh, erectile dysfunction. Like the way C.S. Lewis is talking about this stuff in the book, I'm like, what? And then he's like, yeah, if you don't make fun of it, if you don't laugh at it, it's just wrong. Like it is the funniest joke played on mankind, is what like C.S. Lewis describes it as. Like it is hilarious that we're like this. Like sometimes, watch if your body wants something you can't have, and you're in public, and that's awkward. Like he talks about it, and I'm like, wow, C.S. Lewis had a sense of humor, but he's like saying it like a Brit would. So it's like all dry, writing all this out, and he's like, here's the deal. He says verbatim, there's a reason there's been sex jokes in every culture ever for all of history, because it's funny.
Yeah, for the round, a posh C.S. Lewis being like, hey guys, you ever all hot and horny and then your downstairs is just mush? Yeah, we get it.
Like that's straight up like how that read. I'm like, what?
But in a fancy British accent.
Yeah. But the important thing that he does talk about though, that I think is still like maybe part of my like conservative side of me showing, Joshua conservative showing.
And it's also
he talks about it though, like where he's like, we treat it so serious, like, hey, we act like jokes aren't okay when like really it's the funniest thing that happened to humans. And then he's like, and then we treat it with this kind of seriousness where like we basically worship it. Like, oh, this is the epitome of life, is to get married and one day doing, And I'm like, that's just the church today. And like he goes on and he's just describing like when we treat it this serious, we act as if this is the most important thing, and it's just not. And that's what ruins not just sex, but your entire romance life. And like he talks about it. And I think he's just right. And I think it's like not just the American church, but the American culture. I feel like the church treats it like your goal in life is to get married and do it with your wife. That it's like, that's unhealthy. And then our American culture is just like, oh man, hey, what's your body count? And I'm like, that's not really great either, actually. And they both just treating it with the wrong kind of seriousness. I really like that terminology.
Yeah, I think to be fair and to give credit where it's due,
I wish that people could read our chat. I'm sorry.
saying oops, erectile dysfunction, that's hilarious to this day. Still works 100% of the time. That's never not funny. So, Ryan, how much should we really care about offending others with how we speak?
So I think there's like, I think you can interact with this question in two ways. The good faith way of interacting with it would be to honestly be a good neighbor, to love others the way you would want to be loved, to treat them the way you would want to treat them. Going back to that golden rule I referenced at the beginning, I would like to think that most people want to interact with fellow human beings, whether they be, the same ethnicity, whether they be the same orientation, whether they be the same sex, gender, same nationality, economic status, all those things. But I've met enough people to know that many interact with this question in a bad faith way. So I think there is a paralyzing effect of like, I don't want to offend anybody. And I actually care. And then newsflash, like humanity is messy. You're going to offend someone. I do think, like Josh has been saying many times, like intent matters. The intent to do harm, you're a piece of it. The intent to use language in a camaraderie kind of way, a friendship kind of way. Hey, I'm with you on that. It's a large part of my friendship with Josh. It's a large part of my friendship with many of my closest friends. But the bad faith way to look at this question would be, I'm going to say whatever I want, and I don't give a fuck if I offend people. That is a bad faith way of interacting with language, and it's a gross depiction of your immaturity. We have, and Josh, I'm not going to go too far down this road, but we have several people in our public lives that talk a lot about others intending to do harm, and they use whatever language they see fit for the moment, and they're couching it under this like, I have First Amendment right. Yeah, you have a First Amendment right in the United States. And that's awesome. You're interacting with that privilege in bad faith. You are using language to do harm. You are using language to sow division, the opposite of this podcast's intent. So I would encourage you to reassess the way you use language and the maturity level that you're at with your language. Because we have many people in powerful seats who use language like a junior high boy who like thinks he's king of the hill. That is as brief as I want to be on that, TJ.
King of the Hill's new season is great, by the way. Throw that out there.
I shouldn't have said king of the hill. The concept of king of the hill.
But I would go so far as to say it's not just in the face of this podcast, in the face of language as a whole. The point of language is, in a way, to unify, to build a community. That's why you can speak different languages.
Yes.
So yeah, that sucks. But Will tragically has left us. He's not dead. His internet broke.
He shuffled his mortal.
His computer was offended by our language and just shut down.
Because it's in a church.
Yeah, that's probably why. Yeah,
He got nerfed by God.
lightning struck his computer.
Yeah. So, Josh, the Bible talks a lot about avoiding perverse language. What is the Bible talking about, and what does the Bible actually say about that?
Yeah. So first, back to what you just said, because you're talking about like the point of language being unified and all that. For those who don't know, those of us here are part of what's known as the world's worst youth group, and Will is our past youth pastor. One of the members who was missing from the world's worst youth group on this episode, I don't remember why he's missing from this episode, but yeah, he would want to point out that that is exactly why Tolkien was an etymologist and why he developed the language before he developed some of the books. Anyway, um, and we won't tell any of his dirty stories on air until he joins us. But um, the Bible question, though, it's interesting. I think largely it's talking about kind of objectifying other people or the kind of language that really only happened in junior high, I feel like, for the most part, for the groups I'm around, but I'm sure there are also Chads in the world that still do this, where they like, oh man, yeah, when I get a hold of that girl, I'm gonna, or like, I've heard some popular, people on air say stuff like, I can do what I want. I can grab him by the pussy. And like, I think that's the kind of language that explicitly the Bible is saying that is perverse language. We avoid that. I think that's the kind of language the Bible is condemning when it says perverse language. It also talks about like using God's name in vain. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. I know Patty has some stuff he wants to say about that. But like in general, I think it's more about objectifying other people, harming other people. We're supposed to be using our language for flourishing, not for tearing people down.
So what if we say like the opposite of that? Like what if I say Ray Ripley could do whatever she wanted to me? Is that a problem biblically?
I don't think so. What we
Should.
I think,
Good. That's
yeah.
what I thought.
Which is also where like the stories, and maybe this is like my heart trying to be more like the Bible, because there's that whole thing where like you're supposed to be getting better and like you change too with the Bible, like naturally, I guess. Because like the jokes that are like dirty that I find funny typically aren't about other people. I really do get uncomfortable when someone starts making a joke with somebody else's body. But man, when we were at a theology beer camp last year and somebody was telling a story about a certain attribute of their own ass, God, that was just hysterical. So, like, talk about yourself. I feel like that's you're in the clear there.
I told you that in confidence. Jeez.
Well, I laugh at homos over clothes size matters. That's about me.
Yeah. I just want to add one, like, piggyback one thing, because I know we're about to go into using God's name in vain. The can't believe I'm going to do this. The text that jumped to my mind, was the section in Ephesians where Paul is talking about kind of in general, like, hey, these are Christian living, kind of like good practices. And he says that do not let any unwholesome speech come from your mouth. And I think sometimes maybe people, because they're trying to line up, not swearing, not using, this kind of language, cursing, cussing, dirty jokes. They're trying to line it up with more of a puritanical understanding of, what makes, what comes out of a man makes him, impure kind of. But the next part, I think, adds to our universal point here of context and community, language being a big part of that. Says, but only what is helpful for the building up of those according to their need. So yes, not every context is appropriate, but also the use of language in camaraderie is I believe is a need. And like now, even more now with like male friendships, I have a friend at work who, his wife does not understand our friendship. It is very vulgar. Like I call him an asshole all the time. Do I mean it to be deriding? Does he receive it that way? No. But when I use that language, it is meeting a need of camaraderie. He does not have other friends. He does not have this community that we are so fortunate to have. So in a very reductionistic way, that is meeting a need, and it is, in my opinion, wholesome talk. Now, you may be a listener out there like, you just want to swear, don't you? I'm like, you're right, I do, and you can't tell me any different. But I truly do believe that kind of language can be wholesome if we're not just so dead set on attaching a puritanical morality to it. I just wanted to add in that one verse because it was the one that jumped to my mind when Joshua brought up this topic months ago.
Yeah. Well, it's going to lead really well into the next question. And I'm going to string together Supernatural and C.S. Lewis into my reaction to what Ryan just said. Perfect. One of W Pig's, one of the other things Lewis talks about, though, when it talks about like family and friendship and the four loves, is like real love doesn't necessarily always need I'm sorry I messed up. And sometimes it's just the simple act of like a high five or like just doing what you normally would do together is sometimes more meaningful than stopping and saying, I'm sorry, or stopping to say, I love you. Sometimes the love is better shown than said. And it's specifically the way he talks about it makes me think of in Supernatural, one of the ongoing bits. Sam and Dean. It would not be natural for those characters to be like, "Oh, I love you, man." But you can feel the love when at their, have to say goodbye. They're always like, "Jerk, bitch," and you're just like, "Yeah, that is them saying love you too, dude." you know, that's not how me and Josh Patterson would. Like, if for some reason we were leaving and Josh was like, "Bitch," I would think I upset him. Usually, I think I actually am like, "Josh, I love you," and pretend to cry a little bit, and then I actually cry when he's not looking. Uh, but just differences. But sometimes it's better shown than said, and that's what you said made me think of that. But we haven't talked about like flourishing, using language to build up, not tear one another down. This is the Church Unity podcast, so we do want to get to like how can we best use our language to bring the church together, add flourishing to the world rather than tearing people down, all that kind of stuff. Like, what is the best way to use our words?
All right. I think so. As far as when it comes to promoting flourishing, I think again, it comes down to recognizing your audience, but then also one thing that I always continuously come back to, and I think I talked about this on Whole Church before, but is that of like finding shared values and promoting those things, even with people who differ from us. And so I always think that's helpful. So how can we discover our shared values and promote those? But I don't know. I do think it's important, like, to use our language to remind our friends and the people that we care about, that like they matter to us, or that they're doing well in life, or things like that. Like, so for me, as somebody with low self-esteem, it's helpful if a friend is like, "Hey, you did good on this," or like, whatever. That's a way to build up, and I think that's good. I think we should normalize complimenting our friends, maybe complimenting other people, definitely complimenting our spouses or significant others. And even like, I don't know, something silly that used to make me really uncomfortable was like telling friends like I love you. But I think even something like that, like letting the people in your life know that you care about them and that you love them, is a really good and important way to promote flourishing. Like if we can get comfortable with using our language to adequately express our emotions, and also to give out compliments where compliments are due, and to respect others and build them up. Um, I think, I think that's probably the best way to go about that. And sometimes that can look different, right? So like, to throw a wrench into it, in a friend group, sometimes like for me and a lot of my friends, our love language, which is not in the book, um, is like to like mess with each other and roast each other. Like if I was talking to Ryan, for example, and he like didn't say something to make fun of me, I would be like, "Oh, Ryan's mad at me right now for something." So I think even just learning your context and learning like how people like to communicate, what kind of things make them feel good, how you build kind of that sense of friendship and camaraderie or whatever, just being really intentional, I think is ultimately what I'm trying to say. Be intentional about your language, learn what people like, and then do that thing.
Yeah. It's actually, I think it was somebody's challenge one day because we do like the practical actions at the end of the podcast usually. I think at some point while we were doing the show, someone was like, "Hey, you know how like sometimes you just think of somebody out of the blue? Take the 5 seconds to just text them and be like, 'Hey man, I'm thinking of you right now.'" That was the practical action. And I actually started doing it for like the last couple of years. I'll do that. And it's so like, and I have like ADHD brain. So sometimes it's just like, "Hey, I haven't talked to that guy in 4 years." And I just texting him out of the blue because I'm like, "Hey, what's it gonna like? Is he gonna get mad at me that I text him? No. What's it? Give me 10 seconds to be like, 'Hey man, I love you. And I was thinking about you right now.'"
I get like 7 or 8 text messages from Joshua a day. So
Just constantly like, "Hey man, I'm in the bathroom. I was thinking about you, Josh.
I have my pants off and I'm thinking about you.
I'm showered, Ryan. Just want to let you know. Get you up and play."
I appreciate that, Josh. Never send pictures.
Yeah.
Just want to add something Josh said. Like, guys, if you're listening to this, tell your close guy friends you love them. Like, get over this junior high mentality. It's like, "Oh, it's gay, man." It's like, you're gonna be alone. Like, and no men's retreat, no men's group is gonna save you from the fact that you can't break down that wall. Like, I tell Josh Patterson I love him so much. Like, it's unsettling.
Like I should be jealous.
And you should be. You send me notes, and I got a trophy from you. Strico will, I love him all the time. Like, your close friends. I'm not saying walk down the street and just be like, hey man, love you. No, you're gonna get put on a list. Like, your close friends, let them know how they've impacted your life. Communicate that to them. That it is invaluable. Like, I can't tell you how impactful several of my male friends at this stage of life have been in the last 5 years. I have stronger friendships with men now than I ever did in church, ever, because that wall was broken down. Do it now, and you know it'll be good for you.
This is the most meta way anyone's ever told me they love me, by the way. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I actually have good news on the front of male love.
Oh.
A lot of my friends, we're all younger than you guys, dinosaurs, but a lot of my friends are even younger than me.
Whoa.
What?
Crazy. Pisses me off a little bit. What do you mean you were born?
You hanging out in high school parking lots, DJ?
No. So just online, just by habit, it was like, oh, how was this kid? He's like, oh, 18. Like, why is he here? But they're all super comfortable. Just being like, yeah, I love you, dude. See ya.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. I hope that's a trend.
Yeah, I think it's actually, I want to throw something in here. I'm going to get dark for a second, so forgive me. But I think, like, I just want to emphasize the point because I do genuinely think it's really important. There is, a loneliness epidemic that's kind of, been well documented, kind of sweeping across, at least our context here in the U.S., but I think other places as well. And you never really know or understand what different people are going through. And so I think using our language to build people up is really powerful because I mean, even amongst men, and this is the dark part, so forgive me, trigger warning, but like suicide rates are high and growing. And so I think it's important to use our language to build others up and let them know that you love them and that they matter and that they care. And like this, I mean, this particular issue is like super important to me for a variety of reasons, but I read a book one time because I'm a nerd and this is what I do called On Suicide by a philosopher named Simon Critchley. And it's like a philosophical essay writing about suicide. And he ultimately argues that suicide, like if you're a true pessimist, you wouldn't kill yourself because like you think too highly of the outcome of that. So you're not actually being pessimistic, you're being optimistic. Um, but also his definition of suicide like absolutely broke me. When I read it, I had to like put the book down and cry for 45 minutes and walk away because what he did was he said suicide is actually impossible because suicide is murder and it's murdering the hated other. Except what happens is the subject has reduced themselves to an object and names them the hated other and then seeks to dispel that hated other. And so it's a murder of the hated other, which just happens to be yourself. And that's just so dark and scary and sad. And I hope we can continue to use language to create a world where those kind of things are not viable options for people. So sorry to kind of bring the mood down a bit, but I just wanted to bring that home. I think it's so important to use our language to build up because you never know what somebody's going through.
Absolutely. I 2 weeks before recording this, I recorded an episode with one of my old professors from Charleston Southern University, Dr. Peter Beck, and he's writing a book called like the Dark Night of the Soul, and it's like for other veterans, and just learning how high the suicide rate is, not just for veterans but also for pastors. Those are like two of the highest things, and he fits both of those categories. And just hearing his story, being someone that he's Southern Baptist. I still look up to him. I love that guy. I'm like, man, if I end up like him, cool, that'd be great. And man, hearing how far some of the stuff brings him down. Yeah, I think for me, when people do jokes like, they joke around that like, oh, kill yourself. That upsets me more than when you're like, oh, go fuck off. Like you didn't swear, but come on, man. That's not cool.
That is a bad use of language.
Yes.
All right. So is there anything else that y'all think we should discuss concerning how we use language when a joke is inappropriate, what it really means to use God's name in vain, or how to use our language in a way that best promotes flourishing, or just whatever, really.
I'll just add one thing is I actually Joshua knows I'm technically supposed to peace out here in a minute, but I want to stick around for Josh's part on using God's name in vain. I just a little preamble here. Our modern concept of swearing is not a biblical concept of swearing. Like when we say shit, bitch, fuck, bastard, I'm getting them all in here at the end here. That is not the thing that the biblical authors are talking about. So get it out of your head. Find a better definition of the words you use to swear by something. I'm sure Josh is going to hit on this much more eloquently, much better. But they're not the same. Quit treating them the same because it's a bad use of language. It's an even worse use of so-called biblical thinking. And while you're at it, get your head out of your own ass. Josh?
Yeah. All right. So the God's name in vain thing is an important, I think, all right. So here, I'll say it this way. I think taking God's name in vain is a bigger deal than most people make it. And here's why. A lot of the times, like especially growing up, when I heard don't take the Lord's name in vain, what they were saying is don't say Jesus Christ is like an explicit or don't say God. Right, exactly. Where, like, honestly, I guess I should explain myself first before I say this, but I'm going to go backwards. Honestly, sometimes in life, I think God it is one of the strongest prayers that I can offer because life sucks sometimes. And like that's a way that I feel that I can cry out to God and I think God is big enough to handle it. But I think using the Lord's name in vain is actually a more difficult command than not saying a few choice words together. Because see, if we want to be biblical, and here I'm going to talk about the Bible for all the haters on the internet that tell me I've never read the Bible before.
I don't know if he's looked at one on it.
The way the Genesis narrative is set up is very similar to how you would build a temple. And so at the end of the narrative, when God brings humans into the story, it's similar to that of when people would place idols into the temple, symbolize and represent the God that temple was for. And so humans, people, when we say we're created in the image of God, we are meant to be idols in the temple of creation, showing the rest of the world what God is like. And the command not to take the Lord's name in vain is actually not about cursing. It's about failing to show the world what God is like in a reasonable way. And so when we do things, when we don't love our neighbor as ourselves, when we, exclude the immigrant and we're okay with like orphans and widows being blown up, like all of those things are taking the Lord's name in vain. When we use the name Jesus to justify our politics or to justify our nationalism, that is using the Lord's name in vain. Anytime that we do or say anything as Christians that misrepresents the God of creation, that is using the Lord's name in vain. And there's a whole bunch of Christians in the world right now who are perfectly fine with using the name of Jesus to promote genocide, to promote the mistreatment of LGBTQ folks, to promote the mistreatment of the immigrant and the refugee, and they think they're just doing great. And if I were to get on the internet and say God, they'd be super pissed at me, but they wouldn't look at the plank in their own eye that's failing to represent the very God they think that they're defending in their nonsense. So I will stop doing my soapbox, but I think that matters deeply. How we live, how we image matters a lot.
Can I just piggyback off of what Josh just very eloquently said, real quick? Since, I'm sure predating this, but since Constantine, empires, wars, expansions across the globe have been done vainly in the name of God. Most of the horrendous things done in the Christianized world have been done vainly in the name of God. So God, quit equating the two. I'm so tired of it. So tired of it. There are historic examples of things signed into law. thing that countries, kings, the divine right of kings, a long-standing thing that leaders have been living by for years, claiming God's will is being done in simultaneous action with what they are doing. That is the most egregious use of God's name being taken in vain. And I swear to Christ, if I hear one more person equate, like I said, Jesus Christ, you use the Lord's name in vain. I'm like, who did you vote for? Tell me. Because I guarantee you it has using God's name in vain implications. Joshua, I look forward to the listener that's going to reach out to you. But that it's true though. And it's not just now. Josh gave a great example of why that is in vogue right now. The church has been doing horrendous things in the name of Jesus, in the name of God for so long. It's not new. It's recycled.
Yeah. I want to clarify a little bit. I don't think simply voting for even Donald Trump, as terrible as he is necessarily taking God's name in vain. I think if you're wearing your Jesus shirt and saying God told me to do this, it's taking God's name in vain.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I assume that's what you meant. I just want to clarify. Because for me, I would equally say if someone said, God told me to go attack this Donald Trump supporter, you are also taking the Lord's name in vain.
That's a terrible use of God's name.
Yeah. And I also feel like a lot of times we do this big picture, but even small picture, myself has taken God's name in vain quite a few times when I told girls that God told me they wanted me to date them. Like, that is taking God's name in vain. And I definitely did that as a middle schooler.
These stories?
We won't go past that.
We used to get those emails in the Christian college that I went to, where you would get emails from these girls and they'd be like, hey, the Lord told me that you and I are.
Yep.
Is the Lord also a thirsty bitch? Like,
I've only ever done it the other way. I've only ever, and like, God thinks we shouldn't be together right now. That's what I was in prayer.
I really feel the Lord telling me to fuck off. I don't know, man. Yeah. But no, that's good. And I'm glad you bring it up because I do think it's a common misconception and it's infuriating. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Also, I'll throw in there for our podcast's sake, if you're using the Lord's name and saying that that's the reason why you can't commune with Baptists or Catholics, that's taking the Lord's name in vain because the Lord's pretty clear that he wants Christians to be one. There we go. That's our unity bit. Our other unity bit, what we do at the end of every show, is we like to ask everybody if you could provide a single, tangible, practical action thing. What's something practical people could do right now that would maybe help better engender Christian unity for whoever feels like answering?
Or Ryan, because he's about to leave.
Yeah, Ryan, because he's about to leave.
I need to redeem my preaching moment there.
No, I like to preach harder.
Oh, that's what you said. You really want no one to listen. I would just say, to reiterate something Josh hit on earlier, communicate effectively the love you have for others to those people. Don't say it in theory. Don't think of it as one of those like, oh yeah, I'll pray on. We treat it like, oh, I'll pray about that. You're not praying about it. Like it's don't let be like, oh, I'm gonna tell my buddy I love him. I'm gonna tell my spouse I love them. I'm gonna tell my mentor that I appreciate and love them. Just do it. Like I swear, there's not a drawback. It's simple. Do it.
I'm gonna make that weighty because that's something that's really important to me. I remember a time right before my last brain surgery when I really thought I was just gonna die because the doctor already said you have so much pressure on your spine it should have already snapped. And I really wanted to call my brother because he wasn't there yet. And I was like, I got to tell him I love him one more time. And my mom pushed back hard. She said, no, you're going to make it. There's no reason to do that. And I'm like, no, I have to. And my dad, very seldomly, does my dad like just straight up like, no, this is happening. My dad's like, no, he's calling his brother. And hey, I didn't die. Could have. And ever since that moment, that's for me when I feel like I need to tell someone I love them, that I'm just going to say it. Like,
Just Joshua, like my kids get annoyed when I tell them I love them and I'm proud of them every day.
Oh.
And I even said to my 8-year-old to Logan before we got in here, he's like, hey, You have a good day at school today? He's like, yeah, I did. I was like, well, I love you and I'm proud of you. He's like, you say it all the time. And I'm like, I'd get really used to it, man. Like, it's not going away. But I love all of you guys and I'm proud of the three of you too. So,
Love you, dude.
Yeah. Oh, you, Ryan. Oh, I'll miss that guy.
Yeah.
I think if I can steal an idea from the practice of psychology, therapy 101 is that you treat your clients with unconditional positive regard. And I think that's good for church unity because it's not telling people that they're stupid, that they're wrong, that they're sinful that brings about transformation, but it's actually that sense of belonging. It's the unconditional love, or to use a Bible word, it's the agape love of God. So unconditional positive regard is my church unity term for the day.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Speaking of agape, have I mentioned C.S. Lewis's Four Loves yet today? Sorry.
Yes. So, John, this is, so this has now become just a regular episode. So, the onus is on you. What happens if we just approach everything with that unconditional positive regard? What changes in the world?
I don't know. I think a lot changes when people, excuse me, the belonging is very important to me. You can tell. I think a lot changes when people know that they belong and that they're loved and that they're cared for. And so I think if we could get out of our, if we could get out of the kind of like weighty theological debates that we like to have or like argue over what words the Bible means, and we could actually learn to recognize Christ in the face of the other, in every individual that we meet, and practice that unconditional positive regard, I think a whole lot would change in the world. Probably stop killing each other, for one thing. We'd probably stop taking advantage of each other, stealing from each other, stepping on one another, but instead seek out mutual flourishing. So I think it would change a lot.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So before we wrap up, we like to ask everyone to share a moment that they saw God in recently, whether it's a blessing, challenge, mode of worship, whatever it may be. Josh, always make Josh go first. You know that probably. Just give the rest of us time to think, and just three of us now. How the mighty fall. Josh, do you have a God moment for us this week?
Yeah. I got to go to Disney last week. I then got really, really sick. Yeah. And I don't know, man. Something about being there, and also I'm trying not to like sound like the amount of text that I got
Deprecation podcast.
compared to the last trip I took, the amount of text that I got that I had to not respond to was really irritating. And I realized that my life is just very different from the last time I took a real vacation. Because like I do that thing where I'm like, I'm not going to respond to work text. I'm not going to respond to podcast text. I'm just going to, personal life. And that it was like, man, every 5 minutes, my phone goes off. And I'm like, is this actually just like my regular life? Is this how I live now? And I just didn't recognize it. So it's a challenge to determine whether or not I want that to be my regular life, because it appears that it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For me, my God moment, I actually today, I'll go with today. I got the opportunity, which is pretty infrequent, but I've always thought a lot about like, working a 9 to 5, whatever, you get like an hour lunch break. Unbelievable to me. Don't understand how that happens.
That's not
flip side. Yeah. On the flip side, you and I, Josh, we can just be off on a weekday. And that allows us, which I've just really never considered, to go spend time with those people who have the 9 to 5 and get an hour for lunch and go eat lunch with them. And I took advantage of that today, and it was great. It was nice to just slow things down, be a part of someone else's workday, and just be in the moment and live in their moment. It was great. It was great. An hour for lunch would be awesome, though. It was cool.
I think I might actually hate it. I got to be honest with you.
I for sure would. Every time I ever actually taken a break at work, by the end of the first 10 minutes, I'm like,
when I was at Shutterfly, we had to take 30-minute breaks. I just edited a podcast. So I'm like, I feel like I don't do well with break as a concept.
Yeah, me neither. But it's cool, theoretically.
Dave Patty, you have a God moment for us.
Yeah. So recently, actually, this past weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was out y'all's two way in North Carolina. I had the opportunity to speak at a conference at Park Road Baptist Church. I think Park Road Baptist Church, something like that, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was an open and relational theology conference called Speaking to a Modern World. And the talk I was assigned, or what I was asked to speak about, was bridging the gap between atheism and theism using open and relational theology. So what I did was I made a strong case for atheism and how it destroys classical theism. And then I used radical theology as a stepping stone to lead to anatheism, which is God after God. So reimagining God after the death of God. And then process theology, or open and relational theology, as kind of the like, here's a viable way to talk about God. And during my presentation, I got emotional, like I did 5 minutes ago. And Tom Ward, one of the people who I know have been on Whole Church Podcast, was in the room, and he asked a very beautiful question. And he asked me, he said, Josh, you did like a great talk. The philosophy, theology, solid, great, got it. However, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that times when you got emotional during your talk, or times when you've been emotional preaching before, could be used as evidence for the divine, because you're tapping into something that is good and beautiful and true? And I'm super glad Tom said that, because I have thought that for a really long time. That part of when I get emotional is because I'm touching on something that is deeply true, or profound, or, based out of love or something like that. And so that was a God moment for me, because like someone I very much look up to, Tom Ward, kind of confirmed this like stupid suspicion, or what I thought was a stupid suspicion that I had inside of me. Like, well, I can't say that, very philosophically articulate, and whatever. But I think that's true. So I think we should. My God moment is recognizing that my emotions are good, that they're beautiful, and oftentimes they can be a pathway to the divine.
All right. Yeah. True. So please, if you're listening still, wow, please consider sharing it with a friend.
Rule.
Yeah. Share it with your enemies. Share it with a cousin. Josh said,
I said especially your cousins. Yeah.
Yeah. If you are already listening on YouTube, thank you. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit your cousins, not your enemies. Very important to turn the enemies.
You're gonna say hit Josh.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, but also follow other shows on the Ozal Podcast Network. Maybe ones without people who are very sick and brains aren't working. Try Let Nothing Move You. I think Christian's feeling healthy right now. Or Brandon Knight's My Seminary Life, or Kung Fu Pizza Party. All of them are healthy doing podcasts. So try theirs.
Yes. But we do hope you enjoyed it. The next few weeks, we're going to take a short break as we prepare for a new series we're going to be doing called the Whole Church Science Fair. There are no ribbons, unfortunately. Yeah.
Or are
We're going to be exploring the relationship between faith and science in the diversity of the church today. And at the end of that series, Will Rose will be back with Thomas Johnston to discuss their upcoming limited podcast series in association with the ELCA on faith and science. Your matter matters. And finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be on the show.
Probably. No one's told him, though. If you guys get with him, let him know. He'll probably be on soon.
Keep sending him Instagram DMs. He just doesn't answer.
That'll work. More people send him Insta DM. That's absolutely his primary means of communication, I'm certain. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Whole Church Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, you can always sponsor our efforts to educate and unite the church on Captivate, Patreon, or Apple Podcast. If you're not into the subscription thing, again, you can leave a one-time tip on our Captivate website down below in the description notes. Thank you again, and please come back next week.